Tonight on the Worldview Report, the IRGC conducts an overnight drone attack targeting a U.S. military base in Kuwait with at least 3 drones. Reuters drops an exclusive report revealing that the U.S. Army has used virtually all of its ATACMS and precision strike missiles during the 5-month Iran war. The Pentagon responds to the missile depletion crisis by signing framework agreements with Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. Their goal is to triple Patriot interceptor production and quadruple THAAD interceptor production over the next 7 years, with Lockheed alone receiving a 7-year contract worth more than $58 billion. Front Page Magazine's Robert Spencer, he compares Trump's 3rd cancellation of planned Iran strikes to Neville Chamberlain's returning from Munich with a piece of paper. And he asked what the Saudis and Qataris told Trump to convince him to stand down again. And he says the only question left is what will be different this time. And in tonight's commentary, I open the Jerusalem Post and document 69 record-setting Israeli technology breakthroughs that have been given to the world, from drip irrigation to self-driving technology to the Rewalk a skeleton, helping paralyzed people walk. And I'll tell the BDS boycott movement that you cannot call yourself morally consistent while using the technology of the people you're trying to destroy. All that and more as the Worldview Report begins right now.
This is Worldview Report with host Brandon House. Whether it is news from the nation's capital or your state capital, from the classroom to the boardroom, from national security to national and local news that impacts you and your family, Worldview Report is your trusted source for vital and uncensored news. And now, here is Brandon House.
Good evening and welcome to the Worldview Report. As we begin tonight, we start with the overnight military exchange reported by I-24 News and confirmed by CENTCOM, as the conflict between the United States and Iran continues on its 5th month with no end in sight. The IRGC, they conducted an overnight drone attack targeting a U.S. military base in Kuwait using at least 3 drones. Footage posted to social media, it showed an explosion as a result of the attack. There are no confirmed reports of injuries or major damage from this specific attack. Earlier in the day, a cargo vessel was attacked approximately 20 nautical miles off the coast of Oman. That's in the Strait of Hormuz, with UK MTO, the United Kingdom, and Maritime Trade Operations, a watchdog, confirming the vessel and its crew were safe. The drone attack, it came as President Trump held a White House press conference on Sunday, in which he insisted the 2-phase negotiations were imminent and called Iran's last chance before decapitation. However, Iranian officials publicly contradicted him, stating Tehran is not engaged in direct negotiations with the U.S. and is only holding talks with Oman regarding maritime routes. That denial, it produced a fiery Truth Social response from President Trump, who branded Iran's leadership unbelievably duplicitous and warned that the U.S. naval blockade will remain firmly in place until a deal or until the military option is exercised. The simultaneous gap between Trump's optimistic deal talk and Iran's flat public denials, well, it is a pattern that has repeated itself throughout this war. Our next story comes from Reuters, and it is an exclusive published by them and by MSN, and it is confirmed by CNBC. And it contains findings that every American needs to hear, and that the Pentagon attempted to downplay within hours of publication. The U.S. Army has used virtually all of its stockpile of Army tactical missile systems, known as ATACMS, and they've used precision strike missiles up as well, known as PRSM. That was during the 5-month Iran war. This is the conclusion of 3 people familiar with internal data who spoke to Reuters. The degree to which the military has run through these weapons has not been previously reported. Those weapons, they cost more than $1 million each. and allowed the military to strike targets from a safe distance without putting pilots at risk. That matters enormously for any future conflict with China, which possesses strong air defenses and would demand exactly this kind of long-range standoff capability. One source told Reuters the decision to use these weapons extensively in Iran, it reflected a choice to avoid riskier ways of attacking Iranian targets, like sending piloted aircraft to drop bombs. A second source has said that CENTCOM nearly exhausted the land-based missiles it had before the war began, though it has been able to reload from military supplies elsewhere in the world. The U.S. also burned through a little less than half of its global supply of Tomahawk cruise missiles since the war began. Adding to the picture, the CSIS report that was published last week, and it estimated the U.S. had used roughly 65% of its pre-war Patriot interceptor inventory during the conflict. Pentagon's chief spokesman responded to the Reuters report by saying America's military has everything it needs to execute at the time and place of the president's choosing. But Pentagon officials are having tense internal conversations about how much longer the U.S. can continue striking Iran without drawing down stockpiles to levels that would limit the ability to respond to crises elsewhere, including the Pacific. Our next story comes from Defense News and the Department of Defense's own press release, and it documents the Pentagon's urgent response to the missile depletion crisis. The Defense Department announced framework agreements with Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin. That was on Monday, and their goal is to triple production of Patriot Advanced Capability 3 missile segment enhancement interceptors and quadruple production of capacity for the THAAD interceptors. The agreements are specifically designed to replenish the stockpiles that have been depleted by 5 months of combat in Iran. The numbers, they are specific. Lockheed Martin, they announced it will ramp up the THAAD interceptor production from 96 per year to 400 per year over the next 7 years. Each THAAD interceptor, it cost approximately $12.77 million. Separately, the U.S. Army, they awarded Lockheed Martin a contract worth more than $58 billion to produce Patriot interceptor missiles, converting what had been a 1-year, $4.7 billion contract into a 7-year agreement. Northrop Grumman's share of the agreements, that exceeds $3 billion. Under Secretary of Defense for Acquisition, Michael Duffy, he summed up the strategic vision with a phrase that's worth noting. Building the arsenal of freedom requires robust, dynamic supply chains at every level of the industrial base. Well, here's the math that drives all of this urgency. By CSIC estimates, the U.S. has used roughly 2/3 of its Patriot interceptors and nearly half of its THAAD interceptors in the Iran war. That much we have reported. THAAD batteries, they start, folks, at $3 billion each. Reconstituting the full pre-war air defense posture, it will take years, even at tripled and quadrupled production rates. In the meantime, the Taiwan Strait remains one crisis away from requiring a military response. Our next story comes from the Middle East Forum Observer, and it's written by Michael Rubin, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. And it raises a question that Pentagon planners are almost certainly thinking about, even as they are not saying so publicly. With Iran again attacking shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and the United States military edging closer to the possibility of seizing the islands that the IRGC uses to stage small boat and drone attacks on international shipping, question of what those islands might contain has become urgent. The 3 most strategically significant islands are Abu Musa and the Greater and Lesser Tanab Islands. Iran seized all 3 from the UAE back in 1971, and they have served as Iranian military staging grounds ever since. Abu Musa, it sits just 50 miles from the Iranian coast, 40 miles from the UAE, and only 10 miles from the Strait of Hormuz. Tanker traffic, it must pass between Abu Musa and the Danab Islands to transit the strait. Now, here's what Rubin documents. U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, and several Western allies have long assessed that Iran maintains an illicit chemical weapons program, despite being a signatory to the 1997 Chemical Weapons Convention. That assessment was bolstered in January of 2026 when evidence emerged that the Iranian regime may have used poisonous chemicals against protesters during its crackdown. Abu Musa has been consistently rumored to be one of Iran's main repositories for chemical weapons storage. If U.S. Marines are ordered to seize Abu Musa, they may be walking into a facility that contains nerve agents, blister agents, or other chemical weapons. Rubin's question is direct and serious. Are the Marines ready for that? Do they have the protective equipment, the decontamination protocols, and the medical support that's necessary to operate in a chemically contaminated environment? And does the American public understand that seizing the Strait's strategic islands could mean confronting weapons of mass destruction? We'll be right back after this short break. Friends, this is Brandon House. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again, when are you going to put this study in print? We want to mark it up. We want to share it with our families. Well, it's here. My brand new 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. This is not a watered down, allegorized replacement theology approach to Revelation. This is a literal, grammatical, historical study, the way the Lord intended his word to be read. And I connect the prophecy of Revelation to the headlines you're watching unfold right now, the rise of global government and the convergence of end-time events the Lord Jesus warned us about. Folks, we are living in serious days, and there has never been a more important time to understand what God has told us about what is coming. Get your 2-volume Revelation commentary today at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Welcome back from the break. Thanks for being with us tonight and every night. And we have big news. After more than 12 months, we have now launched our Worldviewpedia software. It is, I believe, the world's premier biblical worldview and Bible prophecy software program because it's built on 36 years of our work, my work, our team that has been interviewing and working with many people for many years. I, as you know, have interviewed wonderful men like Dr. John Whitcomb. Every interview has been transcribed and transcoded. The late Dr. Jimmy D. Young was on with me countless hours. I could go on and on. All of these interviews have been transcribed and transcoded, and the transcribing alone was nearly $30,000. What this means is you can now go to worldviewtube.com, look in the bottom right-hand corner, and you'll see Worldviewpedia. It's a little blue box, small little box on the right-hand corner, and you can click it and ask any question you want. Tell me, what is Mormonism? What's Islam about? What's communitarianism? What's technocracy? What's the real meaning of Philippians 4:13? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That verse is taken out of context all the time. The real context is I can endure persecution and hardship through Christ. who empowers me. Not that I can slam dunk a basketball. I can't. You know, you hear a lot of athletes use this. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I'm going to go win this game. That's not the context. The context is the endurance we have with the indwelling of the Holy Spirit who helps us to persevere even in the face of hard persecution and even death. I can endure this because of Christ. See, it's a Bible software. It's a worldview software. It's a Bible prophecy software. And you can ask it questions and get immediate answers. And it's all quarantined, folks. This is not interlaced with anybody else's content, but Worldview Weekend and our 36 years. So you might want to try it out. It just got launched today after more than a year. WorldviewTube.com, bottom right-hand corner, and there it is, blue. Click it and ask a question. See what you think, all right? If you appreciate all we're doing, we appreciate your joining our vault. That gives you more access to our Bible software because you can only ask it a few questions because guess what? Every time that software runs, it's running these big servers, and that costs us money. So if you want to have unlimited access, we invite you to consider joining our Biblical Worldview Archives and Bible software program, which I just introduced, Worldviewpedia. And you can join it and have full premium access, full details at worldviewtube.com/vault. We also have 22 channels coming. We're going to be launching by September 1st, around that time, 22 brand new channels. A national security channel, our brand new Israel channel. So much coming, folks. We're going to have a Revelation channel. We're going to have a Fast Facts on False Teaching channel. We have so many years of programming that we're launching 22 24/7 television channels. That's how much content we have. The issue isn't content. The issue is putting it in formats that you can access and learn from. That's a good problem to have. 36 years of content. And so we're launching 22 new channels. And if you're a Vault member, you'll have access to them. Full details at worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. Hey, don't forget about our national conference coming up Friday night, October 23rd, Saturday, October 24th. It's filling fast. It's free this year, but you must have a ticket. To secure your seat, all you got to do is go to worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. And our studio dog, Dolly, has decided to jump in and say hello. You normally do this during Brandon House Live, not Worldview Report, but glad you're here, girl. Well, let's get back to the news. Our next story comes from Front Page Mag, and it's written by Robert Spencer. He is director of Jihad Watch, and it's one of the most pointed analysis of Trump's latest Iran diplomatic reversal that's been published this week. Spencer, he opens with the same words that we have all been thinking for months. Here we go again. As you know, President Trump announced on Saturday that the perimeters of a deal had been agreed to, that Iran and other Middle Eastern countries had asked him to cancel the next round of planned strikes, and that he had agreed to do so. Well, my friend Robert Spencer, and often guest at Brandon House Live, he reminds readers that just weeks before this announcement, Trump, he was calling Iran's leadership scum, sick people, and liars who chant death to America. And now the deal is back. Spencer's central comparison is one that gives the piece its title, Neville Chamberlain's September 1938 announcement. After returning from Munich with a piece of paper bearing, well, Hitler's signature, he announced that he had secured peace in our time. Comparison, it is not comfortable for Trump supporters. Robert Spencer acknowledges this fact, but he makes the case that is accurate. In both cases, a Western Democratic leader faced with a dangerous adversary accepted what the adversary was willing to give on paper rather than what was actually necessary to protect the peace. So Robert Spencer, he asked the question, what the Saudis, Qataris, and UAE, what did they tell Trump to convince him to stand down? Noting that the Gulf states, well, they have enormous economic interest in avoiding the destruction of Iranian energy infrastructure. And of course, avoiding another round of Houthi strikes on their oil facilities. Spencer suggests their interest and America's strategic interest are not necessarily identical, and that Trump may have confused the two. And he closes with the same question that Well, he's been asking for months. What will be different this time? What will Iran be asked to actually do? Not just agree to on paper. That has not already been agreed to and then violated in every previous negotiation. Well, now it is time for our nightly Worldview Report commentary. While the haters rage, while the BDS, which stands for Boycott, Divestment, Sanction Movement, tries to strangle the Jewish state, and while campus radicals and Western elites chant for its destruction, well, Israel just did something remarkable. Israeli exports hit an all-time high of $169 billion in 2025. That is not a typo, folks. $169 billion. Higher than the previous record set in 2022. Higher than the government's own forecast. And it happened in the middle of a war, in the middle of rocket fire, shipping disruptions, currency swings, and a global campaign of economic warfare that was designed to isolate the Jewish people. Credit where credit is due. The official figures, they came from Israel's Foreign Trade Administration, and they were reported by the Jerusalem Post and others. The high-tech sector, software, research and development, cybersecurity, they all carried the day. While Europe tried to punish Israel politically, Asian markets opened wider, and the numbers, they don't lie. Boycotts, they failed. Now enter Hillel Fuld, the Israeli tech commentator and proud Zionist. In a post that has rightly gone viral, Fuld, he looked the Jew haters straight in the eye and said, thank you. Thank you for dropping the mask. Thank you for no longer pretending this is about anti-Zionism. You finally went full Nazi propaganda, and the world, they can see it for what it is. And then he did what every honest person should do. He listed the inventions that you would have to throw away if you truly wanted to live without Jewish and Israeli contributions, like modern drip irrigation that feeds, lots of dry lands, desert lands. Then you have the USB flash drive, the pill cam that lets doctors see inside the human body without surgery. How about mobile eyes camera systems that are saving lives in cars around the world? Waze, the Iron Dome that has protected Israeli civilians from thousands of rockets. Checkpoint's firewall technology that became the foundation of modern network security. Rewalk exoskeletons that help paralyzed people walk, or cam devices that help the blind read. How about drugs for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's? And then my favorite, the cherry tomato. Ooh, I love cherry tomatoes. And then you have solar water heaters on rooftops across the planet. And that's only the Israeli list. Then he kept going into the broader Jewish contribution to civilization, like the ABO blood groups, the theory of relativity, nuclear magnetic resonance that became MRI, public key cryptography, that secures the internet. The first practical laser. How about the ballpoint pen, the shopping cart, the Barbie doll? And then, of course, you have frequency hopping technology that underpins Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So, you want to boycott the Jews, do you? Fine. Start by throwing out your phone, your computer, your car's safety systems, your medical treatments, and most of the technology that makes modern life possible. And then I say to the anti-Semites, good luck returning to the Stone Age. That is what Jew hatred ultimately offers. Scripture is not silent on this. Genesis 12, verse 3. I'll bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you, I will curse. And look at the nations and the companies that stand with Israel and those that curse it. The pattern is not hard to see. 9 of the 10 most valuable companies on earth have deep ties to Israeli innovation. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's a blessing. This network is exploding in growth when many networks have collapsed or on the verge of it. And don't we know? because we've worked with some of them that are really no longer around or might as well not be, as irrelevant as they become. So God blesses those who bless the Jewish people. Does that mean I agree with everything the Israeli government does? No. But I'm standing up for what God is doing and going to do with the Jewish people, both politically and spiritually. The BDS movement is not new. It is the latest version of the same ancient hatred that has tried and failed to erase the Jewish people for centuries. This is the demonic plan. But Satan knows if he can wipe out every Jew on the planet, they don't cry out, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," and then there's the second coming. There's not a millennial kingdom, and I could keep going. The difference today is that the Jewish state is not only surviving, it is thriving, it's inventing, it's exporting, and it is defending itself. And it's exposing the moral bankruptcy of those who demand its destruction, while quietly using the very technologies that the Jews have created. The people of Israel, they live. And as long as they do, the world will continue to benefit from the creativity, the resilience, and the genius that God has placed in this teeny little nation. The boycotts, they will fail. The hatred, it will fail. The record books already prove it. That does it for this edition of the Worldview Report. As always, thank you for tuning in and supporting the broadcast at worldviewfoundation.com. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care.